Welcome to the Health Headliner podcast by Tudu Digital. Our content is informational only and not medical advice. Please consult your provider. Now, let's dive into today's headlines.
All right, so you wanted to know more about tattoos and cancer, huh? Seems there's been some buzz lately about a possible link.
Yeah, there has.
We dug up a couple of things to help us deep dive into this. There's this article from Medical Express, March 3rd, 2025. Tattoos may be linked to an increased risk of cancer, twin study suggests.
Oh, yeah.
And then we've got the original research paper, straight from BMC Public Health. Tattoo ink exposure is associated with lymphoma and skin cancers, a Danish study of twins.
Sounds promising.
It does, right. This actually kind of piggybacks on a Swedish study from last year, 2024, that also suggested a connection.
Yeah, it's definitely catching attention, and for good reason, I think. This Danish study, they did something really interesting using twins. They looked at twins, some with tattoos, some without, and then checked out their cancer diagnoses.
The whole twin thing is fascinating to me. What's the benefit of using twins in a study like this?
Well, twins, they share a lot, right? Genes, their early environment, all that. So when you compare twins where one has cancer and the other doesn't, it helps you zero in on the effect of the tattoos, on the cancer risk. It's like a built-in control group.
Makes sense. So what did this twin study actually find?
They focused on a few specific cancers, lymphoma, skin cancers, but not the most common one, basal cell carcinoma, and then bladder and urinary tract cancer. What they saw was people with tattoos had more skin cancers and lymphoma.
Huh. Okay, that's pretty big. Did they find anything about specific types of tattoos being more of a concern?
You know what? That's where it gets really interesting. The link was strongest for big tattoos, bigger than your palm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and for lymphoma specifically, the rate was almost 3 times higher if you had a large tattoo compared to your twin without one.
3 times.
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay, we all know people with small tattoos. They seem fine. Does that mean smaller tattoos are totally safe?
Not necessarily. You gotta remember that tattoo ink doesn't just stay put on top of your skin. Studies have shown that those tiny ink particles can actually move around. They go to the lymph nodes.
Oh, okay. So where do those wandering ink particles become a problem?
Well, think about the lymph nodes. They're a vital part of your immune system, right?
Yeah.
They're like filters. They trap stuff that doesn't belong and help fight infections.
Uh-huh. So if the lymph nodes are constantly dealing with ink particles...
That's the worry. The ink in the lymph nodes could cause this constant inflammation, which over time could make the risk of abnormal cell growth and cancer go up.
Okay, so the ink itself could be causing long-term inflammation. What about the ink colors? Is there anything to suggest that some colors are riskier than others? I don't know, some just seem more intense.
Yeah, it's a common question. Some earlier research suggested certain pigments might be worse, but this specific study didn't find a clear connection between the ink color and whether someone got cancer. At least not yet.
So no need to panic if you've got a whole rainbow on your skin. But it's not a free pass either, right?
Right, exactly. We need more research to say for sure if color really plays a role.
Makes sense. But, I've heard anecdotally that red ink can be more reactive. Is there any truth to that?
You're right. Red ink does seem to cause more allergic reactions than other colors. And that actually brings us to a really cool idea, something called the ink deposit conjecture.
Okay, color me intrigued. What's this conjecture all about?
The idea is it might not be just the ink itself, but how it interacts with the tissue around it. Imagine those ink particles constantly bugging the cells nearby, making them multiply faster. And that increased cell division, well, it could make those cells more likely to become cancerous.
So like a chain reaction where the ink is the first domino to fall?
Bingo. And this isn't a completely unheard of thing in medicine. We see something kind of similar, though much rarer, with breast implant-associated anaplastic large cell lymphoma.
Wow.
Yeah, BIALCL. It's a specific type of lymphoma linked to breast implants, showing how something foreign in the body can sometimes be tied to cancer development.
That's a pretty sobering thought. Makes you really think about anything we put into our bodies, even something seemingly harmless like tattoo ink. But before we go too far down that road, we should talk about the limitations of any study.
Oh, absolutely, for sure.
Yeah.
This study had a few. Firstly, it only looked at people who had already survived cancer, which could mean there's what we call survivorship bias.
Survivorship bias. I've heard that before, but remind me, what does that actually mean?
Sure. Survivorship bias means the folks in the study are more likely to be the ones who beat cancer, which could skew the results. It's like looking at a forest and only seeing the tallest trees because the shorter ones got chopped down. You're not seeing the whole picture.
Right, right. Got it, thanks. Any other limitations the researchers mentioned?
Yeah, they didn't differentiate between types of tattoos. They put decorative tattoos, permanent makeup, and medical tattoos all in the same bucket, and those could have different effects on cancer risk. Plus, they didn't have info on sun exposure, which is a big deal for skin cancer, especially for tattoos out in the sun.
So it seems like there are still a lot of question marks when it comes to tattoos and cancer risk. It's like trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces.
You got it. And that's exactly why more research is so important. We need to dig deeper into how those ink particles mess with the lymph nodes, like at a molecular level. We need to see if certain types of lymphoma are more connected to tattoos than others. And we got to look into the long-term safety of laser tattoo removal, which is getting more and more popular these days.
So much to explore. So before we get into what all this means for you and your tattoo decisions, let's recap. There seems to be a connection between tattoos and some cancers. The size of the tattoo matters. And we definitely need more research.
And it's super important to remember, these findings don't mean everyone with a tattoo is going to get cancer. It's about being aware of the possible risks and making smart choices.
Absolutely. It's about knowing your stuff and making choices that feel right for you. Speaking of choices, I'm already thinking about my next tattoo, but maybe I'll hold off till we finish this deep dive. Stick with us for part 2, where we'll dig into the practical stuff, what to consider when picking a tattoo, how to find a good artist, and more.
You know, it's kind of crazy how this research makes us really think about something as personal as tattoos, from a health perspective.
It is, huh? I mean, for a lot of people, getting a tattoo, it's a huge decision.
Yeah.
It's about expressing themselves, maybe remembering something important, or it's part of their culture,
Right.
It's not something people just jump into.
Absolutely. And while this research does bring up some real concerns, it's not about like scaring people off from tattoos.
Right.
It's about giving them the info so
Yeah.
they can make their own informed choices.
Okay, so let's talk practical stuff. What advice would you give someone who's thinking about getting a tattoo, knowing what we know now about these potential risks?
Well, one thing that really jumped out from the study was the size thing. They saw the strongest link between cancer and those bigger tattoos, the ones bigger than your palm.
Okay.
So if someone's worried about the risk, going for a smaller design might be a good idea.
Smaller is better, huh? At least when it comes to tattoos. It seems like moderation is a good rule for so many things in life,
I think that's a smart way to look at it.
Right.
Placement is another thing to think about,
Right.
like where you want the tattoo and how that might affect your health overall.
Are there, like, certain spots that could be riskier than others based on what we know about ink moving around?
Well, we know that ink can travel to the lymph nodes,
Right.
So areas with lots of lymph nodes, like your armpits or groin, might need a little extra consideration.
So picking a tattoo spot is like a game of anatomical strategy.
Yeah, kind of. And speaking of strategy, one of the most important things is choosing a good tattoo artist.
Oh yeah, couldn't agree more. This is something I feel strongly about. It's not just about finding an artist whose style you love. It's got to be someone who puts safety and hygiene first.
Absolutely. A good artist will be super strict about sterilization. They'll use top-notch inks that have been tested, and they'll give you clear instructions on how to take care of it.
Right, because it's easy to forget that a tattoo is basically a wound.
Yeah.
You got to take care of it so it heals well and doesn't cause any problems.
Exactly. A good artist will walk you through the whole thing, making sure it's safe and positive from start to finish.
Now, I know some people listening might be thinking, what about laser tattoo removal? Is that a safe option if I'm worried about these risks?
That's something researchers are actively looking into.
Yeah.
Laser removal breaks down the ink particles, and then they get absorbed into your blood.
So it's like the ink takes a little tour through your body after it's broken up?
Kinda, yeah.
Ah.
And while laser removal is generally considered safe, we need more research to be sure about the long-term effects of those broken down ink particles.
It seems like we're at this interesting point where tattoos are super popular, but we're still trying to catch up on understanding the long-term consequences.
That's a good point. It raises some questions about regulations, too. Right now, the rules around tattoo inks are all over the place, depending on where you are.
So what about the future of tattoo ink regulation? Do you think we'll see stricter rules as we learn more?
We're already seeing some movement in that direction.
Yeah.
In 2020, the European Commission started taking steps to make stricter rules for tattoo inks and permanent makeup.
Okay.
The idea is to limit the use of certain chemicals that could be harmful.
So it's like a safety net for people, making sure the inks used are held to a higher standard.
Exactly. And I think we'll definitely see more of this as research continues and maybe uncovers new risks.
It makes you wonder, like, what other long-term health effects we might discover down the line? What don't we know yet?
That's the big question. One area researchers are starting to look into is how tattoo ink affects the whole immune system, not just the lymph nodes.
Ooh, okay, that's interesting. Tell me more about that.
Well, we know tattoos trigger an immune response as part of the healing process, right? But now there's some evidence suggesting that this response could have bigger effects on how the immune system works overall.
So it's like tattoos are leaving a subtle but lasting mark on our immune system beyond that initial reaction.
That's the really interesting part. It's a brand new area of research, and it shows how much we still need to learn about tattoos and our bodies. And beyond the immune system, there are questions about whether tattoo ink could affect other organs. Remember we talked about the ink traveling to the lymph nodes and bloodstream?
Yeah, those little travelers on their anatomical expedition. But are we actually seeing ink particles ending up in other parts of the body?
It's still early, research-wise, but some studies have found tattoo ink particles in places like the liver and spleen.
Oh, wow.
What we don't know yet is what that really means.
It's like we've opened this Pandora's box of tattoo ink, and we're just starting to figure out where it all goes and what it might be doing along the way. It's kind of freaky, to be honest.
I get it. It reminds us that even choices we think are harmless can have unexpected consequences. But knowledge is power, and the more we know about the risks, the better we can make informed decisions about our bodies.
And that's exactly what this whole deep dive is about. We're looking at the research, talking about the complexities, and giving you the info you need to make those decisions. But before we wrap up this part, I'm curious about something else. We've been focused on individual choices about tattoos, but what about the bigger picture, like for society? Do you think this research could change public health policy?
That's a really good question. As we learn more about the possible health risks of tattoos, it's only natural to wonder how that might affect public health policies.
And we've already seen some changes, haven't we? Like with the European Commission's move to regulate certain chemicals in tattoo inks.
Exactly. That's a perfect example of research leading to actual policy changes.
Right.
And I think we'll see more of that as the research keeps going.
It's like a ripple effect. Scientific discoveries, changing policies, and hopefully, in the end, making things safer for everyone.
Exactly. And beyond regulations, this research could also push the tattoo industry to innovate. Maybe we'll see safer, more biocompatible inks that lower the risk.
That would be amazing, like science and art working together to make tattoos safer and more expressive for everyone.
It's definitely possible. And it just shows how this research could affect not just personal choices, but the whole world of tattooing.
This has been a really eye-opening conversation. We've talked about so much, from the tiny details of the research to the bigger picture for individuals and society. I feel like I'm leaving with a much better understanding of just how complicated this all is.
I'm glad to hear that. It's all about giving people knowledge so they can make choices that fit their values and priorities.
Definitely. And I don't know about you, but my head is spinning with all this info. But there's one more piece to this puzzle. The psychological and emotional side of tattoos. I mean, tattoos are so much more than just ink. They're often deeply personal expressions of who we are, what we believe, and what we've been through. So how do these potential health risks change how we feel about tattoos on a deeper level? We'll get into that and more in the last part of our deep dive, so stick around.
Yeah, it's true. We've been focused on like the physical side of tattoos and the potential health risks, but tattoos are so much more than that. I mean, they really mean something to people, you know?
For sure. You're totally right. Tattoos can be super powerful symbols. They can represent all sorts of things like love, loss, resilience, or even just a love of art and expressing yourself. It's really personal, often a very emotional thing.
And I bet this research is stirring up some complicated feelings for people who already have tattoos. Absolutely, yeah. Some folks might be feeling anxious or even regretful after hearing this, while others might not be bothered at all. It really depends on the person and how they feel about their tattoos.
It's like this research adds another layer to a decision that's already really personal.
It does, definitely. And I think it's important to say there's no right or wrong way to feel about this information. Everyone processes things differently.
Exactly, yeah. Some people might want to, dive deep into the research, read all the studies, every detail. Others might just trust their gut and their tattoo artist. There's no one way to deal with this.
I agree, totally. And, we have to remember that risk is just a part of life. Every day we make choices that have some level of risk.
So true. I mean, driving a car, eating certain foods, even walking down the street, there's always some risk. You can't get rid of it completely, but you can try to make smart choices.
Right, exactly. And for a lot of people, The personal and emotional benefits of getting a tattoo outweigh the risks. It's how they express themselves, connect with their body, or remember something important. Those are powerful things.
It all comes down to weighing those risks and benefits and deciding what's right for you. No right or wrong answer, just what feels good to you.
I think this research could actually be a good thing for the tattoo world. It could lead to more open conversations between artists and clients, a chance to be more transparent and make sure everyone's making informed choices.
I love that. It's like a partnership between the artist and the client, talking openly about the risks, making sure the client feels good about their decision, and working together to make it a safe and meaningful experience. That's a beautiful thing.
Couldn't agree more. At the end of the day, the decision to get a tattoo is a personal one. There's no one answer for everyone. It's a choice each person has to make for themselves.
Totally. It's about listening to yourself, doing your research if that feels right, and making a choice that fits your values.
Well said. I hope this deep dive has given everyone the knowledge they need to think about these things and make those choices confidently.
Me too. We covered so much today, the details of the research, the bigger picture for everyone. If there's one thing I hope you take away from this, it's to be an informed and empowered person. Whether it's about tattoos or anything else related to your health, knowledge is power.
Couldn't have put it better myself. The more we understand about the risks and benefits of the choices we make, the better we can handle things in life with confidence.
Well said. All right, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one last thought. We've talked a lot about the potential risks of tattoos, but what about the risks of not expressing ourselves? What about the risks of holding back our creativity and that urge to connect with our bodies in meaningful ways? It's something to think about, considering everything we've discussed today. Thanks for joining us on this journey. It's been fascinating and really got me thinking.
Thanks for tuning in to the Health Headliner podcast by To Digital. Like and subscribe for more health news and breakthroughs. Stay healthy and informed. See you next time.